Now, here are Morgan Streetman and Roxanne Wilder.
Poor Morgan. We assure him about the safety and cleanliness of this workplace that he's stepping into every Monday. And what do? Right as the show's starting, a big old sneeze in here. I'm sorry about that.
I tell you what, I hope she doesn't have coronavirus, Pat George, because if she does, I'd say I've got it now.
Knock on wood, I believe I have pollenitis. I think there's a lot of pollen in the air, and I think that's what I'm dealing with.
Talk about pollen. It was about an inch thick, and I couldn't take it anymore on my patio. So on Saturday, I spent 5 hours scrubbing every inch of my patio from ceiling to floor.
And then are you allergic to pollen?
No, but my wife is.
Okay, well, I was going to say, you can be the one out there doing that heavy labor because you're getting it in your nose.
It didn't bother me at all.
Okay, oh my goodness.
But I notice now that I want to look through the screen, I can see the pool.
That's nice. You can actually see outside.
It had offered a nice layer of privacy if you want to do a little skinny dipping or something.
Yellow
right?
and green tint.
Kind of like everybody's car right now, I'll tell you. Well, this has been a pretty good year for me. I started getting those allergy shots every week, and I've been doing a lot better this year than I was. So I'm a believer. I think they're working. In fact, I was realizing the other day, oh, that's right, it's pollen season now. Normally I would be just all stopped up, all kinds of stopped up and sneezing all the time with all this oak pollen in the air. But
the old modern medicine hooking you up.
Yeah. Well, the way those shots work is they put the allergens in the shots, and then they sort of build up the amount of allergens over time that are in each shot.
So you fight them off.
Well, your body starts to get used to them, basically.
Okay.
You start to, I guess you develop, you get used to them. You're getting so many allergies in the shots that, now your body's like, a little bit of pollen in the air.
How does this mess up the bees? There's pollen everywhere for them, isn't there then?
Well, yeah.
Good question.
I don't think it does mess them up. I think they like it. They're out there collecting it all over their bodies.
Off your lawn furniture.
That's right.
They don't have to go to a plant.
Right. When we hear about the bees, the population of bees going down, and we see all the pollen, it doesn't add up. I see your point.
They're not going, Pat George, for the pollen, right? That's not why they're going to the plants. They
don't eat the pollen?
No, the pollen gets on their bodies when they're on. They go there to get the sugar out of the flowers and other things. I mean, they're going there to get sustenance, and then the pollen sticks to their bodies, and as they go from plant to plant, that's how they pollinate the other plants, which is why they're important.
Look at Morgan educating us on the birds and the bees. We're getting a biology lesson.
He's the only one that hasn't had honey this morning.
I haven't even had any honey this morning yet.
We're getting a biology lesson to start the show. Thank you.
But I have had, goodness gracious, this is a big morning, everybody. I mean, this is, Pat, I was telling you, Roxanne, you know about it. I mean, they stopped trading on the markets already this morning. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're going to get into and talk just a little bit today about what happened over the weekend, which was the future markets absolutely cratering, crashing. And, the oil markets, oil futures are way down. Oil is way down. I mean, oil seems to be headed down towards about $20 a barrel. Last I looked, it was right around $25 a barrel, but things are moving so quickly right now. And the markets just opened at 9:30, and by 9:34 this morning, trading had been automatically stopped.
It's going back up since it was stopped. Since the point at which it was stopped, I see it going back up a little bit.
You see the numbers going up a little bit? Well, it was automatically stopped because it crashed so much. It was down. The S&P was down over 7%. I mean, think about that, 7%. And when that happens, the computers step in. The robot overlords step in and automatically stop trading, and they stop it for 15 minutes. And that's what they did this morning, and it went through about 9:49 a.m.
When's the last time that happened?
That's a good question, Pat George. I'm not sure. It's got to have been a while. Because that's a pretty severe downward move. Dow was down 1,800 points. I don't know exactly what it is right now.
24,497.
That's what it's down?
No, it's not down that much. That's what it's at total.
All right. So, anyway, big problems in the financial markets this morning already. The yield on the 10-year Treasury, here's a question I can answer for you, Pat George. The yield on the 10-year Treasury is down below 0.5% for 10 years. So you loan the federal government your money for 10 years, you get 0.5% a year on it. And that is the first time that it's ever gone that low.
Gold's around 1,700.
Is gold moving up? It should be.
Yeah,
one would think.
1,700.
Okay, so people are trying to find something to put their money into, and the money's flowing towards gold. Another company that's down big is Boeing. I mean, Boeing, is
Not surprising.
Absolutely not. But, it isn't just because of their navigational equipment, which they've had a lot of problems with the MAX series.
That was bad enough.
Yeah, the 737 MAX. They don't even think they're going to have that issue all resolved until maybe late summer or sometime in the fall of this year when they could bring all of those back online. But now they've got an electrical wiring issue that the FAA has come across, that now they're going to have to rewire all the electrical wiring in the MAX series of planes. So Boeing today is down like 10%. Last I checked, things are moving so fast it may be down significantly more than that.
I had a friend crying over the weekend that his stock's in Delta, down.
Mm-hmm.
No one's flying on planes.
Well, and that's kind of...
Vice President Pence just said to go ahead and continue to fly on planes if you are healthy.
Well, there you go. Keep flying on the planes. All this is coming out of the coronavirus fears that are circulating now, much like it seems like the virus is starting to circulate throughout our entire country. I did see Dr. Anthony Fauci over the weekend said that if you're elderly, and thought it was interesting because he didn't define what that means. What does it mean? What do you mean if you're elderly? Well, how do we, what age group are we talking about? He said, do not get on a cruise ship.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard somebody else saying basically nobody should be getting on a cruise ship.
Only old people normally. Around the majority
That's who
of them,
gets
yeah,
on the cruise
right.
ship. So you got to imagine the cruise industry is going to potentially be devastated by this situation. And certainly, you can't blame anybody for not wanting to get on a cruise ship because you see these cruise ships, if somebody gets coronavirus or gets on the ship with coronavirus, then, they get quarantined for long periods of time. What's going to happen to this, the Diamond Princess out off of California? I think it's the Diamond Princess. It may be a different princess.
It's called the Grand Princess.
The Grand Princess, okay, because Diamond Princess was out of Japan. But they have so many princesses in their fleet. That's the thing.
Not a lot of princes, but a lot of princesses.
You noticed that, huh? So the Grand Princess out off California is apparently going to dock in Oakland. They're going to offload the people and then put them under mandatory quarantine and ship them around to some different military bases for testing purposes. That's what's expected to happen pretty shortly here. So, you got to think nobody's going to want to be getting on a cruise ship in the near future because you just don't know what could happen. It could be, you think you're going for a 3-hour tour.
And you get a 3-week vacation.
And you get a and then you're under military quarantine at some military base, which, can't be. I'm going to guess that the service is not quite at the same level that you got used to on the cruise ship.
And they don't have buffet lines there for obvious reasons.
Do they have buffets? Do they have room service? They probably have room service. It's just,
You have all the MREs you want.
That's right. That's right.
Can you imagine being a family away from, take a romantic cruise with your spouse, and then you're on the cruise ship, you left your family with
you boarded your
relatives,
animals.
and then what?
You boarded your animals.
You boarded, good one, yes.
Ooh.
And you can't do anything about that.
You have a job.
Mm-hmm.
You have a job,
That's
right.
kind of important, too.
Think of that. But you pay for 7 and get 14 free sometimes.
Yeah, right. But you better know how to work on those MREs. I remember those MREs. You can make special recipes with them, and you probably have some knowledge of this. But you can combine different MRE.
Some of it's good
ingredients and actually make things like I remember the cheesecake you can make with the with the cheese spread and the drink packet and the crackers. It's quite good, actually.
I'm sitting here keeping my eye on the stock market as we're talking, and it's literally making me lightheaded, and I can only imagine what traders go through.
Well, can you see what it's down yet? I know it's showing you what the total amount is, but it's not giving you how much it's down, huh? You need a different app then. We need a better app than that.
It's down 5.27%.
Okay. Which one? The Dow?
The Dow.
Okay.
About the same as the
Hey, we're
S&P.
getting ready to take a break here in a second. Elizabeth Warren, who's she going to back?
Who's going to give her something? Probably. Who's going to give her something? I don't know. I think maybe everything's already been given away
right
in exchange for the endorsement, so maybe she's not going to back anybody. I don't know. You'd think intellectually she would line up more with Bernie. The Burn Man.
But
right?
then that would be too much of something.
Too much burning? Well, I don't know. I mean, Biden's the one who supposedly has things to give away. So, if she wants something like some kind of cabinet position or something like that, one assumes that she might endorse Biden, which is certainly what we've seen in a coordinated fashion. We've seen everybody endorsing Biden, and you can't tell me that that's not coordinated. Everybody just happens to drop out and endorse him on the same day. And in fact, we had a clip because the gaffes will not quit with Joe Biden. We can expect those all the way through the election, I guess, if he even makes it that far. And if we make it that far, we'll be right back after this commercial break.
Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. We're trying not to instill a lot of fear in people as we're going through some of these coronavirus stories and the effects, but it's not a pretty sight when you look at the stock market today.
Well, that seems to be one of the main effects is the coronavirus anxiety, right, that's coming over people. I don't know long-term what's going to happen here. I mean, to me, it almost seems like we could be reaching a point globally that it is out of control. I know we were so early on this story as well, and you guys know I don't like talking about the same thing week after week after week, but we were way ahead of the game on the story in terms of just bringing some kind of attention to it.
You were so early, you almost had patient number one.
Well, that's right. I mean,
patient X.
It brings up the issue. We still don't know who the first person in China to have it was. Patient zero or the zero person who would be the first one to have it. Case zero. You're laughing.
Pat and I were incorrect. He called it patient number one. I called it patient X.
It's not patient. I mean, it's not
victim.
It's zero. It's definitely zero.
But how come we don't know that?
Well, I don't know, Pat. What are you doing in there? You're the producer. You should have all this ready for us. I come in here and there's nothing. I don't even get my cinnamon and honey drink this morning. What's going on in there?
You're going to get that.
You've been worried about that giant accident on 75, which just sounds terrible, where you said a cement mixer was flying along, probably way over the speed limit. That's the assumption. Somehow flipped over and, 3 people are dead.
Cut a car in half and dropped the front of the cement mixer right off.
Now, is the guy driving the cement mixer?
Don't know.
You don't know.
But by the looks of that, he probably didn't make it either.
Well, goodness gracious. I tell you what, you take your life in your own hands when you get on the interstates. Particularly, I don't know if it's particularly here in Florida, because I was talking to a guy from Long Island, and he said, no, these interstates are calm compared to what we deal with up there. That's what he said. He said, up there, it's absolutely insane. So I guess people are just better drivers up there. Kind of like they're just, overall just a lot sharper in the Northeast because of the environment up there. And speaking of environments, we're kind of talking about that, the sharpness of the environments in the restaurants now. You were saying, Pat George, about, do you want to go out to restaurants and stuff like that? I mean, I'm finding more and more, it's hard to go out to a restaurant and have a nice time. It's hard to get good service at restaurants. I don't want to sound like a crotchety old person, but I mean, it's always
you're
a
young
problem.
Guy.
I'm young.
Just listening for the first time, Morgan is a young guy.
I just have reason, I have decently high standards, but I don't think they're that high. I mean, I like, look, if it was my house and I want a drink, I can get up and go to the refrigerator and get another drink, but at a restaurant, I'm not allowed to do that. So unless the person comes back by and says, hey, would you like a refill on your drink or something, I can't. I have to sit there. And I'll tell you, I've just seen lately, maybe in the last 10 years or so, just a real decline in the quality of service. And Roxanne, you made an interesting point as we were discussing that there's almost this competitive aspect that's developing between the servers and the customers as to see who's better. You don't think you're better than me, do you? No, well, it's just different roles at this point in time.
I like to sit down and I like to be welcomed and feel like that person is friendly and that maybe I would like to just a civil, nice person like, hey, how are you doing today? Thank you for coming in. Not just sort of the serious, what can I get you? No smile. I want to smile with my service. I'm sorry.
Well, there you go.
I do.
Well, how do you like it if you ask them, if you're not ready to order? Are you ready? And can you give us just a minute? I mean, you think just a minute? I mean, they'll go away for like 10 or I feel like it's punishment at that point. Oh, you weren't ready to order when I'm ready to take your order. and they go away. I mean, this doesn't happen everywhere, but I mean, I've experienced a number of times lately where they go away for like 15 minutes. They don't come back.
When I go out to eat, I wear an apron, so they know that I'm working next door and I only have an hour. So I get great service. They understand. We can relate.
Now, the flip side is how many of those servers are saying to themselves, oh, my gosh, the level of rudeness of the people I have to deal with nowadays in my restaurant.
Well, and that may be, too. They may be tired. I hear they're tired of everybody being on their phones all the time, but that's certainly not me in a restaurant. I'm not on my phone. That's not why I'm needing a minute to look at the menu. Usually I'm needing a minute to look at the menu is because, when you get there, you generally are having a conversation. And so sometimes it takes a minute. I don't want to necessarily just say, could you stop talking? I need to look at the menu. So you're having a conversation, and you just haven't gotten around to looking at the menu just yet. But it's not because we're photographing the menu, or it's not because we're scheduling our Instagram shots of the food, the appetizers.
I'm normally checking in on Facebook so someone will join me.
And we do know that servers now, unfortunately, have to be photographers as well.
Lots of picture taken now.
That's what I saw. I mean, I tell you what, that seems to be people's primary activity anymore. And what's your hobby? Taking photographs for social media. I was out at Clearwater Beach over the weekend, and it doesn't appear to me that anybody is all that interested in actually doing anything at the beach.
Nature.
They're all posing. Yeah, nobody's out in the water, that's for sure. And it was a little chilly, so maybe that's part of the reason. But what I mostly saw people doing, and these look like spring breakers to me, saw a couple of people playing volleyball and things like that, but very few. What I mostly saw people doing was posing for photographs. And so they and their friend will be there, and they'll be doing all these poses, and their friend will be taking shots, and then they'll kind of come together and look at the phone to see what shots did you get. Did you get the shot that I wanted? Did you get the look that I wanted? Did you show what a great time I'm having here at the beach, taking photographs? I mean, did you get that? And then they'll split back apart.
I like to run up behind them and throw popcorn on the ground when they're doing that.
What, for like the paparazzi?
No, for the seagulls to attack.
Oh, for the seagulls. Okay, seagulls like popcorn, huh?
They like anything. Just throw something on the ground. They'll be all over those people.
Well, I would have got it if you'd have said you were tearing up a piece of white bread and throwing it on the ground behind them or something.
It's funny you say that because I may have dreamt this. I'm trying to find it right now, but I saw a story about a seagull grabbed a woman's cell phone, thought it was food. That's what the researchers say. The seagull thought it was food. Maybe the seagull was just sick of seeing people taking selfies on the beach.
Well, there you go. I tell you, we're kind of all over the place today. Normally, we got a lot of topics, and we did have some topics, but we haven't
Let's get to them.
Well, we've kind of talked around some of them. One of the things I wanted to talk about was, did we talk about the 2 people in Florida that have now died from coronavirus? Or did we just talk about that off air? So we get into these conversations, I can't even remember anymore.
Where were these 2 that died? Not from the boat.
Well, it's not revealed where they may have been. They both apparently had recent international travel. So that would probably be the source of getting, I'm guessing, the coronavirus. We don't think it's spreading here in the community in Florida yet, but, who's to say?
Do you mean the one from Bradenton, the very first one? Could be one of them? Do we know?
No. The deaths are in Santa Rosa and Lee counties.
Oh, okay.
So one of those is that the Panhandle, right?
Yes, Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa is the Panhandle.
And, of course, Lee is down south of us near Fort Myers.
And both of those, presumably, foreign travel is how they acquired it.
That's the presumption. And one of them was older, I think over 70, I think. They say that I heard somebody saying this morning the median age of death, and I don't know if this could really be true, but the median age of death is 80. Now, it does seem like this more significantly affects older people. And in fact, I don't think we've even had a young person die from it. Anybody under 18 yet? No, nobody's died from it who's gotten it. And it doesn't seem to have a major impact on young people.
I was listening to a different radio group this weekend, and the person on the microphone said they had just returned from Italy a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
This microphone?
No.
That's why he qualified it with that.
A different radio group said they had just returned from Italy a week ago, and they were talking on the microphone, of course. So I hear this, and I think, gosh, am I glad this wasn't one of our stations.
Well, they've apparently quarantined about 16 million people in around Milan in Italy, northern Italy. And, of course, Germany and France have both crested over, I think, 1,000 cases each. So it's, we'll see it maybe out and about in Europe. I think one of the issues is there's not enough test kits, or there haven't been enough test kits, but they're hurrying up to manufacture those, and I know they've got several 100,000 apparently arriving today and maybe 1 million more arriving on Friday. So that would be a good business to be in. I was thinking about that. Being in the mask business right now, or the test kit business.
Disinfectant business. If we could
disinfectant. I mean, that's a big business. That's a real big business. I mean, there's a lot of Lysol.
Spray. I mean, we go in suits and spray furniture and houses and cars.
Well, it's funny you
Spray
say
everything.
that. Now when you go into restaurants and you go into stores, you can smell the scent of Lysol in the air.
Well, Lysol apparently does kill it, so that's probably a good thing. Got some Lysol in the air. Speaking of going into places, we're going to talk a couple things wanted to talk about, and I don't want to skip over this. We've kind of bounced around so much we haven't really gotten to the topics, but I wanted to talk some more, just a little bit, about the after effects of the coronavirus on our society. But then, speaking of going into places that may or may not have been cleaned, we had a very interesting story about Airbnb, for any of you that are Airbnb users out there, that I think is pretty fascinating stuff to understand what Airbnb is doing when you go and try to book one of their units. Because you probably are not aware of what they're doing in terms of looking into you as the renter. And we don't want this story to get lost among all the coronavirus hysteria. So stick around for that.
Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. We've got an unbelievable story about a company, I should say, that is looking into what you do online. You're not going to believe this. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. But first, something may be going by the wayside now in lieu of coronavirus.
Well, something I've noticed is handshaking is apparently going to be going away. I think that's pretty sad. I've always enjoyed shaking hands with people. I grew up, my dad was a big handshaker, and I know not everybody's into that. In fact, I have friends who kind of never shake hands with anybody. I always personally liked it. Maybe it's a particularly American thing. I don't know, but I always really liked handshaking. And just in the past week or so, I've had several people decline a handshake, want to instead do an elbow bump, or one guy thought it was pretty funny, wanted to do like a new thing where you bump your feet together or something. I'll just pass on all that stuff. If you want to do that kind of stuff, just forget it. I don't want to shake your hand anyway. And that brings up another thing, which, this has caused me to think about handshaking, and I do want to bemoan the death of handshaking that I guess is now coming. But I'll tell you, I've noticed a disturbing number of people, Pat George, and I don't know if you have as well, but who don't wash their hands in the restroom.
Have you been listening to Schreiner's show?
No, but I have not. But
he camps out in there, I think, to catch people.
Does he do that? Is he looking for that?
Yes.
I find that highly disturbing, and I've started noticing it more and more. And it's particularly disturbing, when I'll be there washing my hands, and you'll hear somebody come out of one of the stalls and make a beeline for the exit door and just walk right out the door. You bunch of filthy rats. Unbelievable.
You know what I do? Even if I'm in a crowd, especially if I'm in a crowded restroom and I've used the handicap stall and I come out and I've washed my hands in there, I make an announcement to the entire restroom. Hey, everybody. There's a sink in there. Just want to let you know my hands are clean. I wash my hands. Because it's natural to judge that person who walks by the bay of sinks. That's weird.
It's so disgusting.
And then don't they say to you, why were you using that handicap stall?
Well, that's the next problem.
You go virtue signaling about your hand washing, and you get handicap stall shame.
Because it's the only one that was open, and there was no one else in the stall.
Hey,
in the,
I only
in the
use
restroom.
that one. That's the only one I ever try to use because it doesn't get used that much.
I have a story about that I'm just absolutely, completely ashamed of for another day. Okay, continue.
Well, I shouldn't have brought that topic up because now we're talking a little bit too much about our bathroom habits, okay? It just occurs to me
you invited us to.
that maybe it's not the worst thing in the world, the death of handshaking, as I think about it, because, goodness gracious. All right. Well, we do have some other stories we wanted to cover. Just looking at, I thought this was pretty interesting for those of you that are plugged into the financial markets, and most of us are in some form or another, or at least those of us with retirements, we've got saved and we've got those plugged into index funds and such. The reason the S&P or trading on the markets today stopped was because the S&P was down 7%, like we said. That's 208 points. If it goes down a total of 13% or 386 points, trading would pause again for another 15 minutes. But if it then goes down an additional 7%, meaning 20% on the day or a fifth of the value of the S&P for the day, 594 points, then the markets would actually close for the day at that point. Now, that would be pretty catastrophic, I would think. Canadian stocks are down about 7% at the open. Brazilian stocks are down about 10% at the open. They're saying this is the biggest financial losses in the financial markets since the 2008-2009 crashes that we had, which, sort of destroyed the economy. So, pretty serious day in stocks today. And, here's a company, and we're going to have to skip over talking about Jussie Smollett and his charges in our quick look back. We'll save that for another week probably. But here's a story that you referred to, Roxanne, with a company that's done an amazing job of making money while having no real stock in trade, and that's Airbnb. I mean, what an amazing story Airbnb has been, where they convince you to rent out your property and they make money off of it. All they are is really connecting you. They're not providing the renters and they're not providing the property, and yet they have a bigger valuation than probably the entire hotel industry, I'm guessing. I didn't look at the numbers ahead of time, but they've got an unbelievable valuation on their business, Airbnb. Well, here's something you probably didn't know about Airbnb, particularly if you're somebody who has rented a unit through Airbnb. It wasn't just a simple transaction. It wasn't like at a hotel when you go to book a hotel and all you have to do is book the hotel and it's booked for you. I mean, do you know that anybody who's booked an Airbnb in the last 6 years has been run through their proprietary algorithm? And you might say, what does that mean, proprietary algorithm? Well, they've got a computer system that amounts to what we would call artificial intelligence that they run you through. And all this comes out because the Electronic Privacy Information Center, known as EPIC, and they've been around for a while, over 20 years, EPIC put a complaint in against Airbnb because they're not revealing this to people. They've got a secret algorithm. Nobody knows what the algorithm exactly, what values it attributes to people, but it involves predictive analytics and machine learning, which is artificial intelligence, to determine the trustworthiness and compatibility of the renter. It also attempts to rate your personality and assigns to you certain personality characteristics across a pretty broad range of personality traits.
They'd never rent to me.
Well, yeah, give it a try, because you try to apply for this and you get run through their algorithm. And they specifically, there's a number of kinds of people that they don't want. They don't want antisocial people. Okay, that's, I can sort of understand that. They don't want psychopathic people, although from some of the stories we've seen about some people who've rented these Airbnbs and even some of the owners who've rented to people, and we've talked about those through the years. I mean, obviously their algorithm's not catching all the psychopaths, but specifically they don't want shy, anxious, or depressed people. And I thought that was pretty interesting, shy, anxious, or depressed people. And I believe they think those people are more inclined to be dissatisfied with their stay and to leave bad reviews as well.
Does anxious, would that be defined by someone who Google searches a lot of health issues?
Exactly. Well, and that
would be me, but I wouldn't leave. I'm not a bad review leaver, so doesn't apply.
Well, you're keying in on some of the types of things that they look at, their algorithm looks at. Now, understand we say they look at. There's no actual person who's looking at any of this stuff. This is all done by computers. This is all machine learning and predictive analytics. It's computer programs, what we're now calling artificial intelligence, is running these. But they look at your social network profiles and your posts. This is before they rent to you. This is when you apply to rent a place, if you notice there's always a lag before you're approved. And you think, what is going on during that lag? Well, this is what's going on. They're looking at your social network profiles and your posts. They're gathering data and checking it against databases that contain information, public and private. They're looking at your email address, your phone number, your IP address, which comes from your, wherever you're getting on the internet. And all of these things are associated with you and can be cross-checked against each other. And, of course, from your IP address, they can get your browsing history, okay, because it's a specific IP address. They can pull up what have you been looking at. They check your geographic location, your date of birth, your social connections. In other words, who are you connected to as friends on social media and otherwise? Who are you connected to on LinkedIn? They check your employment history, your education history. They're looking at your driver license number, and, of course, from that they can gather data about what your driving history has been, all publicly available at some point. And a lot of this public data gets bought up or vacuumed up by private companies who then put it into private databases that can be searched and accessed and don't have, the same sunset horizon that some of the public data does. Now, in Florida, we've got a pretty broad public records law. So, a lot of public information is available online here in Florida, but not all states are like that. But most states have companies, and these are many times national companies, that buy up their data and put it into private databases. And that's how you get these telemarketers and other things, and they find out so much information about you ahead of time to target their marketing to you. This is all coming out of private databases that have been seeded with government information that's been purchased. And occasionally you'll read articles about the different DMVs, the Department of Motor Vehicles, like, for example, in Texas and California, who make millions of dollars every year selling this data on you, to these private companies that create these private databases that are used by marketers. The algorithm that Airbnb employs also looks at your financial account information, whether you've got a blog and what kinds of things you're posting in the blog, and it tries to analyze your posts both on social media and on the blog to determine your personality.
Is it too late to get off all this stuff?
I know.
It probably is. Goodness gracious. Well, you need to have some kind of a system, to clean up your social media probably. And there's one out there called Jumbo, and it looks like an elephant. It's an app like Dumbo, but it's Jumbo. That one seems to be fairly broadly recommended.
Mm-hmm.
It automatically cleans up your social media for you, including deleting any old posts over a certain date, and you can pick the date, 1 year, 3 months, 1 month, whatever it is. That probably makes sense. That's probably a good idea. But understand, once you post something on social media,
there's a record.
There's a record forever. Somebody's already gone and captured it. Uh-oh. You're going to be spreading the coronavirus. Okay.
Yeah.
I see you getting ready. To spray me with aerosolized particles. It's going to happen.
Okay, just look at the light. I forget if looking at the light makes you sneeze or doesn't make you sneeze.
It does make you sneeze, looking at the light.
Shoot. Okay, well, I think I suppressed it.
But listen to some of these personality traits that Airbnb is looking for. Badness, antisocial tendencies, goodness, conscientiousness, openness, extroversion, agreeableness. That's what they want. They want agreeable, open extroverts. That's what they say. Neuroticism, narcissism, Machiavellianism, or psychopathy.
I can see someone
And
writing a review. The end justifies the means. Okay. Come on.
They don't want neurotic, narcissistic, Machiavellian psychopaths. That's for sure. That's what they don't want.
They don't want fiction writers then, because you Google a lot of weird stuff and you might come across that way.
I'm doing research. They apparently don't want people involved in pornography or who have done reviews with negative language either. Think about this. This is crazy. We'll tell you some more when we come back. I just want to finish out this Airbnb thing because then we are going to talk about one. We're going to flip back again, and then we got to go out there. But I just want to finish this Airbnb thing. The algorithm considers derogatory or angry words as indicative of antisocial personality disorder. So if you've written something that they consider to be derogatory, and think about what that can mean in today's world, where everybody who have one political persuasion is a racist, or certain thoughts maybe about the founding fathers are considered to be institutionally racist, think about what that can mean. The last place that Airbnb checks is a U.S. government watch list, like the terrorist watch list and things like that. So, you thought you were signing up to rent somebody's extra room in their house.
Probably on a vacation.
Meanwhile, you've got this entire, I'll just say, crazy personality profile run on you, and you don't think Airbnb is saving that information? You don't think that's going into a database somewhere? And you don't think marketers and other companies are relying on the analysis run by Airbnb's algorithm? I bet you they are selling that data, because all data gets sold and resold and resold. That's business. It's big business today. So now this is following you around, what some stupid computer decided was your personality based on its analysis of all of your big data. I think that's pretty offensive.
Mm-hmm.
I would say frightening, but it's not that frightening because I've never tried to rent from an Airbnb. But I think it's just offensive. You didn't sign up for that when you were trying to rent from them. And yet they're doing it to you, and I'm sure it's buried somewhere in the terms and conditions in some benign language that you didn't understand what they were actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Roxanne, you want to talk a little bit back about the financial crash.
Well, just as we're talking, I'm looking at these articles appear on my news sites, and of course we always say you got to read things, go in depth. But I'm just going to read some of the headlines to understand. This is what most people do. Most people just read the headlines. So this is what most people are reading about right now. How coronavirus could tank the economy and Trump's reelection odds. Wall Street still wants Trump, but it could live with Biden.
Well, and you see that. You see the media just foaming at the mouth, hoping that the economy will tank here. And, Pat, we're looking at the Dow, and it's been steady moving up. It's down 6.3% now. Just before the break, it was 5.97% down. So we could see trading halted potentially again if the Dow hits that key index of movement down for the day. We could see things pause again. And I did think it was funny because you're trying to pull up the S&P, and I saw you got onto a little bit. You got onto Sino National Petroleum, the Chinese petroleum company, SNP. And then you got onto the Scottish National Party.
You can't find it that easy.
You can't find the S.
Ticker, no.
Well, you got to use the ampersand, Pat George. S and P, not S and P.
He was thinking of it as like mac and cheese.
S and, okay.
S and P.
Do you think the Democrats are at that fish market in China?
Was it Joe Biden at that fish market cleaning things up? Oh, we didn't even get to play our Biden clip for you. Well, we'll have to save that one for next week. And if the news hasn't taken over our storyline next week, we will play for you some great Biden gaffes from the recent past, as well as from 33 years ago when he was running for president, because they're all the same gaffes. It's all the same lies and plagiarism. You'll hear it again. Joe Biden hasn't changed. These aren't new mistakes. This all happened once before. And it's happening again. Only they're trying to tell you he's a man of great dignity, a man of great service. And they're trying to push you to vote for him because what they really want to do is anything to get rid of President Trump. All right, let's go out there. Now, this is a story I had to share with you last week, but we didn't get to it. So we had to just keep her out there as it was last week. But I thought this was a very interesting story about an electronic device that the CIA developed in the early 1970s. And it's called an insectohopter. And it's actually a robotic dragonfly-sized device that operates just like a dragonfly. In other words, it flaps its wings. It looks just like a dragonfly. and they can use it to. And back then, I mean, I was wondering if we were going to see that they could use it for video surveillance, but thankfully they weren't that advanced back then. But it does kind of blow your mind that in the early 1970s, they had the technology to create a mechanical dragonfly that could fly over and listen in, record audio. And so they were using it as essentially a mobile audio bug. So if you know that you're having some secret meeting, some spies are having a meeting or something, they want to be, and Lord knows what else, because I'm sure it wasn't limited to the cloak and dagger stuff that you see in the movies and that you think about. Think about political parties having a meeting or having a meeting outside or violating different embassies to go and secretly listen in on conversations by diplomats. But there's a group that's done a lot of FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, and they were able to get the blueprints and the actual engineering details on this insectahopter, and they've published them on what's a website called the Black Vault. So it's fascinating stuff. It's, I've got about 30 pages of technical drawings and information here. We can't share it all with you, but if you're interested in this stuff, you may want to go and check it out, because the insectahopter, and this was another amazing thing to me, was able to be remote controlled by a laser control system. I mean, to think our technology was this advanced in the early 1970s. I mean, you can see pictures of the insectahopters, and they're essentially indistinguishable from a large dragonfly. I mean, it's just fascinating stuff. But here's the intelligence objective that they put out in writing, and you can get this out of the project history. They only spent about $100,000 doing this, but here's the intelligence objective: to provide a clandestine, insect-like dragonfly vehicle capable of being directed to a specific target at least 100 meters distant for the purpose of emplacing an audio surveillance device, optical microphone. At the outset of this program, both the aerodynamic and propulsive feasibility had been demonstrated by flight tests during a Phase 0 effort where they spent $40,000 to demonstrate the feasibility. In addition, the proposed method of providing tracking and guidance, the Roam laser system, was a proven operational concept. So, I mean, think about that. They developed a small mechanical dragonfly-like listening device that they could control by laser, and they could fly it up to a football field away and probably further than that, control it, communicate with it, pick up audio, and capture that information, and possibly even have that information sent back to base. And that was in the early 1970s, called the insectahopter. Check it out, folks. I think you'll find it fascinating. I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.